The hospital hallway smelled like antiseptic and freshly brewed coffee, a combination I had long since stopped noticing. My shift was supposed to have ended an hour ago, but emergencies didn't care about schedules. I rubbed my temples, scanning the patient file in my hands as I walked into the rehab ward. Another athlete. Shoulder injury.
Dr. Collins, your last patient is already inside.
The nurse at the front desk informed me, offering an apologetic smile. I sighed, pushing open the door to the consultation room. Inside, a young man sat slouched on the examination table, scrolling through his phone. His black hoodie was pushed up to his elbows, revealing toned arms, and his dark hair was slightly damp with sweat. He looked up at me, and for a split second, our eyes met, sharp, deep-set eyes that held an unsettling amount of confidence.
"You're the doc?"
he asked, stuffing his phone into his pocket. I nodded, glancing down at his file. "You're Logan Diaz, right? Third-year university student. Boxing team. Injured shoulder."
"Yeah, but it's not that bad,"
he said casually, rolling his shoulder.
"I just need a quick check so I can get back to training."
I arched an eyebrow. "That's not how rehab works. Let me see." He hesitated for a moment before reluctantly pulling off his hoodie, revealing a tight-fitting compression shirt underneath. The defined lines of his muscles were impressive, but my focus remained on the injury. His right shoulder was slightly swollen. "How did this happen?" I asked, pressing my fingers lightly around the area. He hissed but didn't pull away.
"Sparring. Took a bad hit, nothing serious."
"Boxers always say that," I muttered, picking up his chart to make notes. "Can you raise your arm?" He obeyed, but I noticed the slight wince he tried to hide. "You need at least 2 weeks of recovery," I said firmly. "No intense training, and definitely no matches." He frowned.
"I have a competition next month. I can't just stop."
I met his gaze. "If you don't rest, you might not be able to fight at all. Your shoulder could suffer long-term damage." He studied me for a moment, then smirked.
"You're pretty strict, huh?"
"I'm your doctor, not your coach. My job is to make sure you don't ruin your career before it even starts." He chuckled, the corner of his lips lifting in amusement.
All right, doc. I'll listen, for now."
"Good," I said, scribbling down his treatment plan. "You'll start with rehab sessions 3 times a week. I'll be overseeing them personally." His smirk widened.
"Guess I'll be seeing you a lot then."
I ignored the strange flutter in my chest and handed him the prescription. "Take these, follow the plan, and we'll reassess in 2 weeks." He took the paper from my hand, our fingers brushing for the briefest moment.
"See you soon, Dr. Collins,"
he said, his voice low and teasing before walking out the door. I exhaled. Something told me this patient was going to be trouble. It had only been 3 days since I first met Logan Diaz, and I was already beginning to understand what kind of patient he was. Stubborn, cocky, and completely incapable of following instructions. "You're early," I said, glancing at the clock as Logan strolled into the rehab room. His appointment wasn't for another 15 minutes, but here he was, looking completely unbothered.
"Figured I'd get a head start,"
he said, flashing me a lazy grin.
"Besides, I bet you love having me around, Doc."
I ignored that. "Sit down." Logan chuckled but obeyed, dropping onto the treatment table with an ease that irritated me more than it should. He was dressed in a loose black hoodie and sweatpants today, but even through the fabric, I could tell his physique was built for combat, lean, powerful, and deceptively relaxed. "How's the pain?" I asked, reaching for his chart. He rolled his shoulder experimentally.
"Tolerable."
I shot him a look. Translation: "It still hurts."
"Maybe a little,"
he admitted, smirking.
"But I've been doing the stretches you told me to."
That was a relief, at least. Most athletes ignored rehab exercises unless someone forced them. "Good," I said, nodding. "We'll start with some light resistance training today." I moved to grab an elastic band from the shelf, but when I turned back, Logan was already shrugging off his hoodie. The action was casual, effortless, but my brain registered it in slow motion, the way the fabric lifted, revealing a brief glimpse of his toned stomach before he pulled it over his head and tossed it aside. He caught me looking.
You okay there, Doc?
Logan teased, flexing his fingers. I exhaled sharply and ignored him, stepping closer to assess his shoulder. Lift your arm, I instructed, keeping my voice neutral. Logan obeyed, though I caught the slight wince he tried to hide. I pressed lightly around the joint, checking for any lingering swelling. His skin was warm under my fingertips, his muscles tense but firm. Any sharp pain?
Not really,
he said.
just sore.
That's normal. It'll take time. I grabbed the resistance band and demonstrated the movement he needed to follow. Logan copied me, his eyes flickering between my hands and my face.
Like this?
He asked, deliberately slowing his movements. Yes, I said. Keep your wrist steady. No jerking. He smirked.
No jerking. Got it.
I ignored the obvious innuendo and focused on adjusting his form. 3 sets of 10. Slow and controlled. Logan followed my instructions, but as he worked through the exercises, he kept watching me. Not in the way patients usually did, waiting for feedback or correction, but like he was studying me, amused by something I couldn't see.
You always this serious?
He asked, finishing his first set. When it comes to my patients, yes, I replied, crossing my arms. He chuckled, shaking his head.
Must be exhausting, being all professional all the time.
Some of us have jobs that require responsibility, I said dryly.
Hey, boxing requires responsibility too.
He countered, holding my gaze.
One wrong move in the ring, and it's over.
I hesitated. That wasn't the kind of answer I expected from someone like him. You really love it, huh? I found myself asking. Logan nodded, his expression momentarily losing its usual teasing edge.
Yeah. Boxing's everything to me.
For a brief moment, there was no flirting, no smirking, just honesty. Then, as if realizing he was being too serious, Logan grinned again.
But hey, if this doctor thing doesn't work out, you could always be my personal trainer.
I let out a short laugh despite myself. Not happening,
We'll see.
he said, eyes gleaming with mischief. I shook my head and moved on to the next exercise, but something told me Logan Diaz wasn't going to make my job easy. A week into Logan's rehab, I found myself regretting taking his case. Not because he wasn't improving, despite his tendency to push himself too hard, but because he was a distraction. A very persistent, very cocky distraction.
You're frowning again, Doc.
Logan said, watching me as he rolled his shoulder, testing its range of motion. I exhaled through my nose, lowering the resistance band I had handed him earlier. That's because you're not following instructions. I said slow and controlled movements, not whatever that was. He smirked, his dark eyes glinting with amusement.
I was following them. Just, my way.
Your way is going to set you back, I warned, crossing my arms. Do you want to heal or not? He tilted his head slightly, like he was considering his answer.
I want to heal.
He said.
I just don't mind if it means spending more time with you.
I fought the urge to sigh. Logan had been like this since his first session, relentlessly flirtatious, treating rehab like some kind of game. And if I was being honest, it was starting to get to me. We were in the hospital's rehab gym today, a quiet space reserved for recovery patients, but Logan somehow made it feel smaller just by being there. Dressed in a sleeveless compression shirt and athletic shorts, he moved with an ease that made it impossible not to notice him. And judging by the occasional glances from passing nurses, I wasn't the only one having a hard time ignoring him. All right, I said, shaking off my thoughts. Again, slowly this time. Logan obeyed, this time making a show of how deliberately he moved. His lips curled in amusement, like he was daring me to react. Better, I admitted. Do 5 more reps, then we'll move on.
Yes, sir.
He murmured, smirking. I pretended not to hear that. As he worked through the exercises, I checked my notes, taking a moment to breathe. This was fine. Professional. I was here to help him recover, nothing more.
So, Doc,
Logan said, breaking the silence.
do you always personally oversee your patients, or am I just special?
You're injured, I replied flatly. And I don't trust you to follow instructions unless I'm watching. Logan grinned.
Sounds like an excuse to keep me around.
I shot him a pointed look. It's an excuse to make sure you don't wreck your shoulder before it fully heals.
I'll take it.
He said with a chuckle, finishing his last rep with ease.
So, do I get a reward for doing well?
Your reward is functional mobility, I deadpanned. He laughed, shaking his head.
Damn. Tough crowd.
I handed him a water bottle, watching as he took a long sip before setting it aside. The silence stretched between us, comfortable but charged in a way I didn't know how to define. You boxers are all the same, I said finally, breaking the moment. You think pushing through pain makes you stronger, but that's how careers get cut short. Logan studied me for a second before replying.
You sound like you've seen that happen before.
I hesitated. I have. It wasn't a lie. I had seen it, athletes who ignored their limits until their bodies forced them to stop. And I had no interest in watching another one make the same mistake. Logan nodded, and for once, there was no teasing in his expression.
I hear you, Doc. I won't be reckless.
I raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? He grinned.
No promises.
I sighed. Figures. As I turned to grab my clipboard, Logan suddenly stretched, rolling his uninjured shoulder with an exaggerated groan.
You know,
He said,
I think I need a massage. Pretty sure it'd speed up my recovery.
I scoffed. Nice try. You can book a PT session like everyone else. He smirked.
I was hoping for something more personal.
I ignored the warmth creeping up my neck. You're done for today, I said, stepping back. Rest and no extra training. I mean it, Logan.
Yes, sir.
He said, but the look in his eyes told me he had no intention of fully listening. I sighed, handing him a towel. He took it, fingers brushing against mine in a way that felt entirely too intentional.
See you next session.
He murmured, voice lower than necessary. I swallowed hard. Logan Diaz was definitely going to be a problem. Hospitals had a way of draining people, patients, doctors, nurses, everyone. But apparently Logan Diaz was immune to that.
You know, I don't think I've ever seen you smile.
Logan said as he leaned back on the treatment table, arms propped behind him like he was lounging at home instead of attending a rehab session. I smile, I replied, distracted as I reviewed his chart. Logan tilted his head.
Not at me, you don't.
I sighed, lowering the clipboard. That's because you don't follow instructions.
You wound me, Doc.
He placed a dramatic hand over his heart.
I'm an excellent patient.
I scoffed. You tried to sneak in extra training last night. Logan had been careless enough to post a gym selfie on his social media. One of the nurses had shown me, and I'd immediately recognized the taped-up shoulder and the distinct lack of common sense. He didn't even look guilty.
Technically, I wasn't training. Just keeping my body active.
Technically, you're delaying your own recovery, I countered, stepping closer. Logan, I get that you're restless, but if you push too hard, you'll be stuck in rehab a lot longer than you want. Something in my voice must have gotten through to him because, for once, Logan didn't have a comeback. He studied me, his usual smirk fading into something quieter.
All right.
He finally said,
I'll take it easy. No more late-night workouts.
Good. I reached for his arm, ready to start his session, but before I could touch him, an unfamiliar voice interrupted.
Logan Diaz? No way.
I turned toward the doorway, where two guys stood staring. They looked about Logan's age, probably university students, one of them holding up a phone like he was about to take a picture. Logan sighed.
Great.
I glanced at him. Friends of yours?
Not exactly.
He muttered. The taller of the two guys grinned.
Man, we thought that was you. Didn't expect to see the undefeated Logan Diaz here, though.
His eyes flicked to Logan's shoulder.
Injured?
Logan's jaw tightened, and for the first time since I'd met him, he actually looked uncomfortable.
Just a minor setback.
He said smoothly.
I'll be back in the ring soon.
The guy laughed.
Damn. That sucks. You had a crazy season, though. People keep saying you're gonna go pro.
Not now, man.
Logan interrupted, his voice sharper than before. The guy blinked, thrown off by Logan's sudden shift in tone. I took that as my cue to step in. This is a hospital, I said, my voice firm but professional. If you're not here for an appointment, I'll have to ask you to leave. The guy scoffed but lowered his phone.
Chill, Doc. Just saying hi.
Now's not a good time, I replied. Let's go. He held up his hands in surrender, backing away with his friend.
All right. Good luck with that shoulder, Diaz.
The second they were gone, Logan exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. That happen a lot? I asked.
More than I'd like.
He rolled his shoulder absent-mindedly.
Most of the time, it's fine. But I hate when people act like they know me just because they've seen a few fights.
I watched him carefully. This was the first time I'd seen Logan without his usual bravado. Must be exhausting, I said. He let out a dry laugh.
Yeah. Kinda.
For a moment, there was nothing but the quiet hum of the hospital around us. Then Logan straightened, shaking off whatever had just passed between us.
Anyway,
he said, flashing me a grin.
Where were we?
I hesitated but decided to let it go. Resistance exercises. Try not to show off this time.
No promises, Doc.
I sighed. Logan Diaz was a handful, but something told me there was more to him than just the cocky fighter everyone saw. Hospitals had a predictable rhythm. Patients came and went, alarms beeped in the distance, and the scent of antiseptic never quite faded. I liked that routine, kept things in order. But Logan Diaz had no interest in order. You're late, I said as he strolled in, 15 minutes past his scheduled session.
Fashionably.
Logan corrected, tossing his gym bag onto the nearest chair. He wasn't even out of breath, meaning he hadn't rushed to get here. I crossed my arms. Being late to rehab isn't a good look for an athlete.
Neither is a busted shoulder.
He shot back, flashing me a grin.
But here I am.
I sighed. Sit. He did, though not before stretching his arms above his head, his shirt lifting just enough to reveal toned abs. I forced my gaze back to his shoulder, reminding myself I was a professional. I stepped closer, rolling up my sleeves. I need to check your mobility before we start. Relax your arm. Logan smirked.
You asking me to relax? Thought you liked me tense, Doc.
Logan, I warned. He chuckled but obeyed, letting his arm go slack as I guided it through a slow rotation. My fingers pressed lightly against his shoulder, searching for any lingering tightness. You're still stiff here, I noted, thumb pressing into a particular muscle. Logan exhaled sharply, his body tensing under my touch. I raised an eyebrow. Pain. He cleared his throat.
No. Just, wasn't expecting that.
Right? I kept my expression neutral and adjusted my grip, but I could feel his eyes on me. The weight of his gaze made the space between us feel smaller than it actually was.
Hey, Doc.
Logan said after a moment, voice lower than before.
Ever had a patient hit on you before?
I didn't stop working on his shoulder. I'm not answering that.
That's a yes.
He teased.
But did you ever say yes back?
I exhaled through my nose, stepping back. We're done with stretches. Time for resistance work. Logan let out a quiet laugh but didn't push further. I handed him a resistance band and demonstrated the movement. Keep your elbow steady, slow and controlled. Logan copied me, his form nearly perfect. Almost too perfect. You've done this before, I noted. He shrugged.
Picked up a few tricks over the years. You're not the only person who's worked on my body, Doc.
I ignored that comment and focused on the session, counting his reps in my head. But Logan, as always, had no intention of letting me stay in control of the conversation.
You ever get in a fight?
He asked casually. I frowned. Why would I?
Self-defense, maybe? Some jealous ex?
I gave him a dry look. I don't have jealous exes. Logan's grin widened.
No exes at all?
I ignored the question. For more reps. He chuckled but obeyed, finishing the set with ease. As he rolled his shoulders afterward, I reached for my clipboard, making notes on his progress. All right, I said. You're improving. Another couple of weeks, and you should be cleared for light training. Logan's eyes lit up.
So I can spar?
I shot him a warning look. Light training. He grinned like I hadn't just given him a clear restriction.
Got it, Doc.
I sighed, knowing full well he was going to test his limits the second he got the chance. As I moved to put away the equipment, Logan leaned back against the table, watching me.
You know, I think I like rehab.
I glanced at him. Because it's helping you recover?
Because I get to see you every time.
He said smoothly. I should have expected that. Careful, Logan, I said, walking past him toward the exit. Flirting won't speed up your recovery. He smirked.
But it is getting a reaction out of you, huh?
I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure I liked where this was heading. Hospitals at night felt different. The hallways were quieter, the usual rush of patients and staff reduced to a few lingering figures. I liked this time of day, fewer distractions, less noise, which is why I wasn't thrilled to see Logan Diaz still here. Didn't I dismiss you 2 hours ago? I asked, pausing in the hallway when I spotted him near the vending machines. Logan turned at the sound of my voice, a bottle of water in one hand, his phone in the other.
Guess I lost track of time.
I gave him a skeptical look. You don't seem like the type to lose track of time. He grinned.
Maybe I was waiting for someone.
I sighed. Logan.
Relax, Doc. I had some team stuff to handle.
He said, shaking his phone slightly.
Coach wants me to sit out longer than I planned. Needed to talk it through.
I studied him for a second. His usual arrogance was still there, but something about his expression was off. Frustration, maybe, or something heavier. Your coach is right, I said. Logan exhaled through his nose.
Yeah, I know. Just.
He clenched his jaw, then shook his head.
Never mind.
I hesitated, then glanced at my watch. I had a few minutes to spare. You hungry? I asked. Logan blinked.
Are you offering to get food with me?
That depends. Are you going to be insufferable the whole time? He smirked.
No promises.
I shook my head but didn't take it back. We ended up walking down the block to a small, nearly empty diner. I wasn't sure why I even agreed to this. Maybe because Logan was quiet for once, the usual teasing dialed back. Once we had our food, I watched as Logan absent-mindedly poked at his fries. All right, I said. What's actually bothering you? Logan looked up, caught off guard.
Who says anything's bothering me?
You're barely eating, and you haven't hit on me in at least 10 minutes. That's suspicious. That earned me a small chuckle.
Fair point.
He leaned back in his seat, exhaling.
Coach thinks I should sit out the rest of the season.
I nodded. He's being cautious. That's good.
Yeah, but I hate sitting still.
Logan muttered, tapping his fingers against the table.
Boxings.
He stopped, rolling his lips together before glancing at me.
It's everything to me.
I knew that already. You won't heal any faster by rushing back, I said. Logan smirked.
You sound like my coach.
He's a smart guy.
Annoying, too.
I took a sip of my drink. Sounds like someone else I know. Logan laughed at that, and for a moment the mood felt lighter. But then his expression shifted slightly, his eyes flickering over me in a way that wasn't just casual observation.
You know,
He said, voice quieter.
I don't usually do this.
Do what?
Sit around talking to people outside my team.
He tilted his head.
Not sure why I'm even telling you this.
I raised an eyebrow. You looking for a therapy session now? Logan huffed a laugh.
Please. If I wanted a shrink, I'd get a real one. You're just.
He paused, his gaze locked onto mine for a second too long. I felt it then, that shift. The kind of moment that hovered between something casual and something else. I set down my drink. Logan.
Relax, Doc.
He murmured.
I'm not about to do anything crazy.
I narrowed my eyes. Define crazy. He smirked.
If I did, you'd tell me to stop.
Then don't. Logan exhaled, shaking his head.
You're a tough one.
You just don't like hearing no. His grin widened.
Not when I know it's a lie.
I should have shut that down. But I didn't. Instead, I let the moment linger for just a second longer before I grabbed my wallet and stood. Come on, I said. You're heading back to campus before your coach starts wondering where you are. Logan didn't argue. But as we stepped outside, he walked a little closer than before, hands shoved into his pockets, gaze flickering toward me like he was still trying to figure something out. And I had a feeling this wouldn't be the last time he tried. Hospitals had rules. So did doctors. And getting too close to a patient? That was one of those lines I didn't cross. But Logan Diaz had a habit of testing limits. Good news, I said as he settled onto the treatment table. Your mobility's almost back to full range. We'll start light strength training next week. Logan grinned.
So I'm getting back in the ring soon?
I shot him a look. You'll be starting strength work. That doesn't mean full contact. He sighed dramatically.
You never let me have fun, Doc.
I'm not here to be fun.
That's a shame.
He murmured. I ignored the way his voice dipped and focused on his session. I guided his shoulder through slow movements, my fingers pressing into his muscles, checking for any lingering tension. Logan sat still, unusually quiet, until I pressed into a sensitive spot. He inhaled sharply. I looked up. Pain. His eyes flickered to mine, something unreadable in them.
Not exactly.
I paused, my hands still on his skin. The air between us felt different, charged. I cleared my throat and stepped back. Let's move on, I said, handing him a resistance band. Same reps as last time. Logan took the band but didn't move right away. Instead, he studied me, a slow smirk tugging at his lips.
You always this serious?
He asked. I sighed. Logan.
Just curious.
He started his reps, muscles flexing under the movement.
Bet you were the quiet, overachieving type in med school.
I didn't answer.
Let me guess.
He continued.
No time for fun, all about work. No relationships.
Focus on your reps. Logan chuckled but obeyed. As he worked through his sets, I kept my expression neutral, but the truth was, I had been like that. Medical school didn't leave much room for anything else. And even now, my life revolved around work. It was predictable, controlled, unlike Logan. All right, I said when he finished. You're done for today. Logan stretched his arms, then slid off the table. But instead of leaving, he lingered, watching me.
You know,
He said, voice lower.
I like that you don't treat me like some boxer stereotype.
I frowned. What do you mean?
Most people just see me as a fighter.
He shrugged.
A name on a ranking list. Either they want something from me, or they're waiting for me to lose.
I hesitated. You think I want something from you? Logan tilted his head.
Not sure yet. But you do look at me differently.
I kept my face unreadable. I look at you like a patient. His smirk deepened.
Right.
I sighed, moving to put away the equipment. Logan, whatever you think is happening here, it's not.
What do you think is happening here, Doc?
I turned, ready to shut it down, but Logan had stepped closer. Too close. The usual teasing in his eyes was replaced by something more certain, more intentional. And for the first time I didn't move away. His voice dropped.
Tell me to back off.
I should have. Instead, I held his gaze for half a second too long. And Logan noticed. His smirk softened into something slower, something real. I finally exhaled. You need to go, Logan. His lips twitched, but he took a small step back.
All right, Doc. I'll behave. For now.
I didn't believe that for a second. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I wanted to. I liked routine, kept things in order, predictable. But ever since Logan Diaz walked into my life, my routine had been anything but predictable. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I minded anymore. All right? I said, standing beside the treadmill as Logan jogged at a steady pace. We're testing your endurance today. Keep it controlled. Logan shot me a grin, barely out of breath.
You're acting like I don't have the best stamina here.
I sighed. Logan.
Relax, Doc. I'm following orders.
He teased, increasing his speed slightly. I watched his form, scanning for any signs of strain. His recovery had been going well, but I wasn't about to let his overconfidence set him back. Don't push too hard, I warned.
Don't worry, I know my limits.
Somehow I doubted that. After another 10 minutes, I stopped the test. Logan stepped off, wiping sweat from his brow. His shirt clung to his skin, and I definitely didn't need to notice that. You're making progress, I said, focusing on my clipboard instead. If this keeps up, you might be cleared for light sparring next month. Logan smirked.
So you do want to see me back in the ring?
I gave him a look. I want you healthy. His expression shifted slightly, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Then, before I could react, he reached over and plucked the clipboard from my hands. Logan, I said, exasperated. He flipped through my notes, his brows raising.
Damn, Doc. You're thorough.
Give it back. He grinned but didn't move.
You really care about your patients, huh?
I crossed my arms. It's my job. His gaze met mine.
No, it's more than that.
I hesitated. Logan studied me for a moment longer, then finally handed back the clipboard.
You act all serious, but I think you care more than you let on.
I kept my expression neutral. And you act like a cocky flirt, but I think you notice more than people expect you to. His smirk returned.
So you do think about me?
I exhaled. Logan.
I'm just saying.
He cut in, stepping closer.
You keep telling me to stop, but you never actually do.
I clenched my jaw. He wasn't wrong. Logan tilted his head.
You want me to back off? Say it.
I didn't say anything. The air between us felt heavier than it should have. Then, after what felt like forever, Logan sighed and took a step back.
All right. I'll behave.
I wasn't sure if I believed him. And worse, I wasn't sure if I wanted him to. Hospitals had rules. Doctors had rules. And I was dangerously close to breaking mine. Logan, slow down, I said as he moved through his shoulder exercises.
I got this.
He muttered, muscles flexing under the resistance band. You're straining. He exhaled sharply but didn't stop. I stepped forward, grabbing his wrist to still his movement. Logan. His jaw tightened.
I need to be ready.
I frowned. For what?
For the tournament.
He said like it was obvious. I sighed. Logan, we talked about this. Your shoulder isn't fully stable yet. He tore off the band, frustration clear in his posture.
I don't have time to sit around, Doc. The season's ending soon. I need to fight.
I met his gaze. Not if it risks permanent damage. He scoffed.
Right. Because you care so much about my future.
The words hit harder than they should have. I took a breath. I do care. Logan's lips parted slightly, like he wasn't expecting that. He searched my face, his usual arrogance gone. I should have stopped there. I should have walked away. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You think I don't care? I've spent months making sure you recover. Watching you push yourself. Holding you back when you refuse to stop. Logan swallowed.
Then what's stopping you now?
I clenched my jaw.
You know,
He murmured.
I can take a hit. But the way you look at me, like you want something but won't let yourself have it? That messes with my head more than any fight ever could.
I exhaled slowly. Logan,
Tell me I'm wrong.
he challenged. Couldn't. His breath was shallow, his eyes locked onto mine. There was no more teasing, no more cocky smirks. Just quiet intensity. Then, before I could stop myself, I reached up, fingers brushing against his jaw. His breath hitched, his skin warm under my touch. Logan didn't move, didn't pull away. Then he whispered,
Finally.
and before I could second-guess it, he closed the distance. His lips pressed against mine, firm, certain. It wasn't tentative. It wasn't careful. It was a collision, all tension and restraint snapping at once. I should have stopped it. I should have thought about consequences. But right now, with his hands gripping my waist and my fingers tangled in his shirt, I didn't care. Kissing Logan Diaz was a mistake. At least that's what I should have thought. But standing here, his breath still warm against my lips, his fingers resting on my waist like he wasn't ready to let go. Regret was the last thing on my mind. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The room was too quiet, too charged. Then Logan huffed out a soft laugh.
Took you long enough.
I let out a shaky breath, stepping back. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Logan.
What?
He tilted his head, eyes burning with something unreadable.
You can't seriously pretend you didn't want that.
I exhaled, rubbing a hand over my face. This can't happen. Logan's smirk faded.
Why not?
I shot him a look. You're my patient.
Not forever.
He pointed out.
A few more weeks and I'll be cleared.
That's not the point.
Then what is?
I hesitated, because the truth was, there was no single reason. There were a dozen of them: professionalism, ethics, the fact that he was younger, bolder, completely unpredictable. The fact that I was the kind of person who needed control, and Logan was the kind of person who loved disrupting it. But none of those reasons had stopped me from thinking about him. None of them had stopped me from wanting him. Logan took a step forward, voice quieter.
You keep acting like this is some huge mistake.
Because it is, I said automatically. He scoffed.
Bullshit.
I looked at him sharply.
You think I don't notice?
His voice was calm, but his eyes were intense.
The way you watch me when you think I won't catch you. The way you never actually stop me when I push too far.
I clenched my jaw. Logan studied me for a moment, then sighed, running a hand through his hair.
Look, I get it. You've got rules. You're used to keeping everything in line.
I stayed silent.
But, Doc.
His voice softened.
You're not just my doctor. Not anymore.
My chest tightened.
I mean, come on.
He added, tilting his head.
Do you really think I flirt with every doctor who treats me?
I narrowed my eyes. Honestly? Yes. He laughed.
Okay, fair. But.
He stepped even closer, voice quieter now.
This is different.
It was different, and that was the problem. I let out a slow breath. It's not that simple, Logan.
No.
He admitted.
It's not.
His lips quirked up, but there was something serious underneath.
But that never stopped you from wanting it.
I swallowed hard. Then, he did something that completely disarmed me. He softened. The teasing, the cocky bravado, it was still there, but underneath it was something steadier. Something real.
I'm not saying you have to figure it out right now.
He murmured.
But stop acting like this doesn't matter.
I looked at him, really looked at him. Logan Diaz, the hot-headed boxer who never backed down from a challenge. The guy who tested every one of my limits, who pushed when I held back, who had somehow, against all logic, managed to slip past the walls I'd built around myself. I sighed, closing my eyes for half a second. You're impossible. Logan smirked.
You like it.
Unfortunately, he laughed, then, without warning, grabbed my wrist and tugged me in, pressing his lips against mine again. This time, I didn't pull away. I let myself kiss him back, let my hands grip his shirt, let myself want this without overthinking it. Because maybe, just maybe, some things were worth breaking the rules for. 2 weeks later, Logan was officially discharged.
Guess this is it, huh?
Logan leaned against the doorframe of my office, arms crossed, looking way too smug for someone who'd just been cleared for light sparring. I gave him a pointed look. It means you don't have an excuse to bother me at work anymore. He smirked.
Oh, Doc. I don't need an excuse.
I sighed. Of course you don't. He stepped forward, dropping his voice.
So, now that I'm not your patient anymore, what's stopping us?
I hesitated. Not because I didn't want him, but because this, whatever it was between us, still felt new, uncertain. Logan studied my face, then grinned.
You're overthinking again.
I exhaled. I do that sometimes. His grin softened.
Yeah. But I don't mind.
I rolled my eyes, but a small smile tugged at my lips. You're impossible.
And you like it.
He echoed, leaning in. I let him close the distance, let his lips brush against mine, let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something worth risking it all for.